What's going on, guys? My name is Kyle and welcome back. Now, I love working on my car, but more importantly, I like learning things about how to do stuff to my car. But sometimes I feel like the only way to learn these things is to be taught by somebody else or binge watch YouTube videos and have a crack yourself. So over the last year and a half, that's exactly what I've been trying to do. Learn as many things as I can and try as many things as I can. If it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But one of the things I learned pretty quickly is it gets very expensive. Not only do you need to buy the car and the car parts and just everyday consumables you need, like oil and filters and all that sort of stuff, but you need the tools and you need the space, which I know is pretty difficult for most of us. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there's people out there that could probably just go out and buy all the stuff they need in one big hit, but for most of us, we probably can't do that. So it's been a slow progression into buying things that I need for a certain task, and then I have that in my collection. And then the next project I do, if I need a specific tool or a certain thing, I grab that. And you sort of just end up repeating that process to when you finish that job, you go to the next project, and then you have to do the whole thing all over again. So I've recently made some changes to the way things are laid out and the way I'm trying to get things to work in here when we make these car videos. So I thought we'd go through them together. I'll show you what I've been doing, I'll show you what the changes are, and hopefully you can let me know what I'm doing wrong and how to make things better. Because I can tell you with 100% certainty, you are way smarter than I am. Let me show you through the basic setup and the way that I have things laid out. So first up, we have our workbenches. Now I know that these aren't the best looking workbenches in the world, and they're super cheap. I got one from IKEA and one from Bunnings, so they're not the most expensive things in the world. I understand that, but they function and they do a job. I would really love to get some nice benches in the future, but I mean, they seem to do okay. One thing I do want to add to this bench is just something that goes along the back. So I could put all the tools there, they can get off the bench, because it just looks gross. It looks ugly, and I wish there was a way that I could just hang them on the wall, but unfortunately in a rental, I don't really have the option to just drill cabinets into the walls and things, so we have to improvise. So the plan in the future will just to be, I don't know, make something for the back, and then we can just use that to drill things into or something. I have no idea. But this is where we also keep our Haynes manual. If you guys don't know what these are, or if you've never used them before, you should definitely get one. This book covers the Lancer and Mitsubishi Mirages from 1996 to 2007, and it has everything that you need to know about your car in this book. It has everything from talking down certain things in the head when you're putting that together. You've got timing belts, you've got everything. This will pretty much tell you how to take apart and put everything back together in your car. So when you're doing things like, I don't know, changing the cam, you can do that. You want to change the timing belt, you'll find all of that information in these books. They're not super expensive, but definitely recommend. So under the benches, we keep both of our jacks. We have the larger low profile jack there, and we have a small little teeny tiny one. This is what I started with. I started with this. This is a really tiny 1400 kilo jack. It is very, very small, but very cost effective. And I used this for like the first 2 years of learning how to do anything with this sort of stuff. I've since upgraded to something a little bit better. This is a 3000 kilo low profile jack. It almost sits the same distance, if not lower to the ground than the other one. But that's not even the best thing. Let me show you the best thing about this jack. The best thing is this. This is the pole that you use to lever and jack up the jack. As you can see, it is freaking humongous, and it just sits in this little slot just here. God, that's difficult to do with the left hand. And there you go. I mean, you can see the difference in that. Bananas. If you don't have a good jack, I definitely suggest getting one. I've always used the smaller versions. This was just the best purchase I think I've ever made when it comes to working on cars. But again, that just comes back to slowly upgrading as you need things, and you just add them to your collection. So moving on to the other bench, you can see we don't really have a lot of stuff down here. A lot of this stuff could for sure be better organized, but I don't do that. So under here we have some oil pans, just some buckets and cleaning things. We also have Millie's toolbox with stuff that she uses, which out of all this space, that's the only thing she has there. So I feel very bad for taking up all this space, but that's Millie's stuff. And then next to that we have another one of those really not so fun, but super helpful purchases. This is a 20-litre tub of Workshop degreaser. I can't even tell you how many times I've messed up and needed to have some degreaser on hand. So we have it. I learned that the hard way, so degreaser is a good thing to have. So now we get to move on to some of the newer additions to the garage, I guess. The first new addition to our list is an air compressor. You don't realize how much you're missing out by not having an air compressor until you have an air compressor. I've only had this thing about a month, and I can't even tell you how many times it's come in handy and I've been able to use it instead of what I was doing before. You want me to show you what I was using before I bought the air compressor? This is what I was using before I bought an air compressor. I would literally chuck a battery in this thing and just try and use it the way I should. Not that my opinion means anything, but if you want my advice, buy an air compressor. Don't use a leaf blower. So we picked up the air compressor and we picked up a little accessory pack to go with it. That pack came with a hose, it came with an air gun, came with a tire pressure regulator. It also came with this budget-friendly paint gun and this engine cleaner gun. I've never seen anything like these before until I started looking them up a little bit. Essentially what you do is you fill this bottom compartment with engine cleaner and degreaser and stuff like that. You chuck the stem inside the reservoir, and then when you attach it to the air hose, it essentially acts like a paint gun. But you can get into weird little nooks and crannies and hit it with the cleaner and you can get a cleaner engine, I think. But not only does buying an air compressor give you the option to use paint guns and engine cleaner guns, it lets you use air tools, things like air ratchets, air tire guns, air cutting wheels. There's so many things that you can use with an air compressor that, again, I didn't know we could do until I bought one. So even though it's wicked to have an air compressor now, the unfortunate reality is I'm going to be probably buying some air tools in the future, which just adds more money to the equation. This is exactly what I was talking about. It's like a vicious cycle of just buying new shit. So before I show you the last thing that we bought for the garage, let me show you the toolbox. So this is what I use. I just use this freestanding Tool Pro toolbox and it's perfect. Tool Pro is like Super Cheap Auto's home brand of tools. And I know a lot of people are pretty mixed on them. They either love them or they hate them. And so far, I love these. One of the things that put me off when I started this was how expensive a good toolbox and good tools are. So this allows me to get into it, get started, and not have to wait around. I can get this without spending an absolute fortune, and they've served me really well. So I bought a couple of different things for this toolbox. I bought all of these Tool Pro inserts, which I definitely recommend. It comes with a bunch of metric and imperial spanners, and the whole insert literally cost me like 80 bucks. It was not that expensive to get all of these tools that are gonna fit in my toolbox. They're organized and they work. I'm sure there's probably better alternatives out there, but for the purpose of what I'm using them for, these are great. Now I've sort of just continued the theme across the board. I've got the socket set for these. Again, it has a bunch of metric, a bunch of imperial. It has a slightly larger breaker bar, a larger ratchet and a smaller ratchet. It has a bunch of different bit heads as well as a bit handle that you can use with this bit socket holder with all of these, so you get the vibe. But it also comes with some slightly added extras. You have a spark plug 16mm socket here, which is just slightly longer if you don't know what they are. They're a slightly longer socket so you don't hit the bottom of the spark plug. I've got a 21mm spark plug socket, and you can see right in the bottom there, if it'll choose to focus, it has a little rubber end there, and what that does is sort of just cups the end of the spark plug to stop you damaging things and makes it easier to get the spark plug out. But I just like the fact it comes with these slightly added extras. It has a little universal joint here for the smaller ratchet handle, so you can see it bends. You can get in weird little funky corners, and this is something that I would never have bought if it didn't come in this pack. So it's nice to have, but not something I necessarily would have thought of when I bought all these tools. So it's a good little bonus. They did half the thinking for me. You guys probably know at this point, it is not a bad thing. And I guess continuing on the Tool Pro theme, I have this. Let me get this out. This is one of the Tool Pro torque wrenches. I'd never used a torque wrench before. I'd never owned one. And it's, again, one of those things that sort of intimidated me because they are a precision tool and they are pretty expensive. They can get really up there, and it sort of put me off for the longest time. But I bought this one. It's not the biggest thing in the world. It goes up to 151 foot-pounds of torque, which I don't think it's actually rated to that, but I'm just going by what's on the dial. But again, yes, it's an affordable option, but it gives me exposure to using things like this. I can try one, and if for God forbid I break it, I'm not spending an absolute fortune on a tool. I know exactly how it works. I can give it a go, see what it's like, and then if I want to upgrade in the future, I can do that. This looks very threatening. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening. But I genuinely think I spent like $60 on this, and it came with a nice little case. It all locks up. It's great. For 60 bucks, you can't go wrong. We also have this. This is our screwdriver insert. Again, this is probably not really that necessary. You can see we've got a massive bunch of just random assorted ones that we had prior. But again, I think having this one in a sleeve, it just helps things get organized, and it makes everything else sort of fit a sense of organization. I've just realized after that comment, I'm about to contradict it completely by showing you the next drawer. Are you ready for this? It's so bad. This is like the junk drawer that everybody has in their kitchen growing up. Mine's just made its way out into the garage, I guess. So good job for organization. I'm just gonna close that up. I felt really good about my decisions to show you the first three drawers, and Now I don't. So I've got a couple of other things in the other drawers. This one's full of things that we used for paint prep and body work and stuff. So we've got some plastic sheets in here. We've got some sanding blocks, an orbital sander. We've also got our Ryobi wax thing. So that all sort of sits in there. Again, that's another one of those junk drawers that we just chuck in there and try our best to forget about. And then under that, we've got just another random drawer. This has got like a Dremel as well as some Dremel bits. We've got a bunch of electrical things like crimping tools and siphons and pumps, just random stuff. A multimeter, I was looking for that the other day. But that's the toolbox, and that's essentially everything we use in most of these videos, just to try and cover as many bases as possible. Obviously with things like a toolbox and tools, there's always gonna be room to improve and room to grow, but for now, this seems to work perfectly fine. Now I get to show you our newest addition. If you saw last week's video, you know exactly what this is. If you didn't, go and watch it. I'll link it up the top and down below. Go check it out. But essentially what we made is a welding station. I've never welded before, I'd never tried that. Again, if you watch that video, that would be very evident. But I've wanted to learn to weld forever. So I thought, why not just buy it? We'll try it, we'll give it a go. It really wasn't that expensive to get a welding pack with a helmet, gloves, a welder, everything you really need to get started. I think it was like 320 Australian dollars. So I'm pretty happy with the affordable option. And again, you can upgrade them in the future, but at least it gets you learning and it gets you started, which in my case, I need to learn a lot more. So this is what we got essentially. So we have the little MIG welder down there. I got a new grinder because my one was terrible. So we bought this 125mm Ryobi grinder. Seems to work really, really well. Gave that a bit of a run last week. I also bought something that I've wanted to have for ages, a vise. I can't tell you how many times, like the air compressor, that I've wanted and needed a vise, and now we have one. So before I bought the vise and the welder, I actually picked up this table. I didn't have this until recently. It's a fixture table, so it has a 3mm mild steel top, which is great for mounting the vise and welding and doing the stuff that I want to do. It has these little holes in here, which means you can get these little threaded clamps that sit on top. I'll put a photo on the screen if I can find one, but it makes it a lot easier to just clamp stuff down onto the table if you want to weld without needing to use things like these G clamps and stuff like that. You can just use the tabletop clamps. But the whole table was only like $200. It's 900 wide by about 600 deep. It's not a massive table, which is great because all the space we have is very limited and we can't really do much about that. So it's nice having a smaller something that we can wheel around. I can chuck it in the middle of the garage and it'll do exactly what I want it to. Now, I know this isn't the most intense setup ever or the coolest setup ever, but it just goes to show you don't need to have the most expensive stuff or the coolest looking setup or whatever, just to try things and to learn and to get started. I think the most important thing is just having the willingness to try things. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We all make mistakes, no one's perfect, but you don't learn unless you do things. I hope you've enjoyed having a look through the way we have things set up, and I hope you have some suggestions. Again, I don't know everything. I barely know anything. So if you have suggestions on what you think would be good, or if we could change things to make things a little bit more practical, I am all ears. If you have any ideas for new projects or anything that you want to see me try, let me know. I got a couple of things that I'm thinking about, but I'm pretty open to suggestions. If you guys like this video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up. Also subscribe. I post new videos every week. You don't want to miss them. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media. All the links are in the description. I will see you next week. Bye.